Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Karen Richards, and I'm the Allen County Prosecuting Attorney. Thank you for coming this morning. Anytime there is an abduction and murder of an innocent child, it is devastating to a community. And I think the anguish is only founded when that crime is not really solved. The abduction and death of 8-year-old Peter Tinsley that finally culminated in an arrest on Sunday has haunted this community for over 30 years. I will remind you that in Indiana, as we discuss this case, all persons charged with crimes are considered to be innocent until and unless they are proven guilty. Therefore, we are prohibited in any way from discussing with you the details of this case. And that really is not the purpose of this news conference. Our Supreme Court dictates that we try our cases in court, but do not try them in front of the media. That being said, many of us, myself included, were part of the investigation that began over the first 19 years. This case was solved by the tireless efforts of many of the people in this room and many of the agencies who are represented by the folks standing behind me. The purpose of this news conference is to thank them for all of the work that they have put into this investigation over the last 30 years. It's almost impossible for me to express the gratitude that this community has for all of the law enforcement and other agencies involved in this investigation that I will try. I will tell you that I was in the office. I was part of this investigation when it started, and there has not been a day, a month, or a year that has gone by without someone in this room working on this case. There were so many different law enforcement agencies involved that it's hard for me to remember all of them. I'm going to try. But they have tirelessly been following every single lead that has been coming to them and investigating every possible new type of scientific technology to determine if that would assist them in solving this crime. Their dedication makes me very proud to be a prosecutor. It makes me proud to be part of law enforcement, and it makes this community proud of them. The people that worked on this case include detectives, some of them retired detectives, and they're in this room this morning. They know who they are. It includes current detectives. We're probably on our second or third generation of detectives. State troopers, street officers, crime scene detectives, victim assistants, DNA and other scientific analysts, prosecutors, profilers, and a thank you, which is unusual coming from a prosecutor sometimes, but a thank you to the media. Because the media, both locally and nationally, has kept this story with us, and that has been a great help to us. And there are so many more. I want to give you the agencies, and if I've forgotten someone, I apologize. But it started out with the Fort Wayne Police Department, the Allen County Police Department, the Indiana State Police, the FBI, the U.S. Marshals, crime scene detectives, the Allen County Prosecutor's Office, the DeKalb County Prosecutor's Office, the media, and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has been so helpful to us. I want to tell you how much I thank you. And Parabon, they have done a fabulous job for us in this case. Our community is forever in the debt of the folks that I have just mentioned. Without their efforts, this crime would remain unsolved. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank each and every one of them for all the work that they've done This case has haunted this community for 30 years, and I believe you have given us some closure. That being said, the few details that I can give you include the fact that the defendant's next court date is July 19th. At that time, formal charges will be filed. Other than that, there really are not details that I can give you on the case, but I would like to hand the podium over to Chief Steve Reed from the Fort Wayne Police Department for his comments. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming today. I'm Chief Steve Reed with the Fort Wayne Police Department. 30 years. 30 years this family has waited for answers. And on Sunday we were able to give them some of those answers. Hopefully now they can start to have some closure. Our thoughts and prayers continue to be with the family. I would like to thank all the detectives, crime scene techs, prosecutors, agents, the Fort Wayne Police Department, Indiana State Police, Allen County Sheriff's Office, Allen County Prosecutor's Office, the FBI, U.S. Marshals, for their hard work and dedication to this case. I've watched these folks work on this case tirelessly. They did an outstanding job, and I'm proud to lead this department. I would like to thank the public. This case has affected our entire community. We have received much support from this community, and I would like to thank everyone for that. And I would also like to again thank the media, our local media, national media. Every time we wanted something put out, information, photos, you did it. You didn't ask questions. You did it. So thank you. I would just like to say that these investigators that end up tying this case together, outstanding work. It's a joint effort. Fort Wayne Police Department, the United States Police, Sheriff's Office, everybody works hard on this case. I would like to turn it over to Sergeant Ron Galvez from the United States Police.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Sergeant Ron Galvez. I'm the Public Information Officer of the Indiana State Police here in Fort Wayne. I'd like to thank Prosecutor Richards, Chief Reed, Mayor Henry, and the representatives of the multi-agency task force, for lack of a better term, the collaborators in this case, for allowing me the few moments to speak to you. I certainly echo everything that Prosecutor Richards and Chief Reed said. That goes without saying. The thing that I want to acknowledge a little bit more in depth is we would not be here today 30 years down the road if it was not for the hard, tireless dedication of the initial investigators that took up these cases. They're bringing their expertise, their interviews, neighborhood canvassing, assigning people to do different tasks within this investigation. Crime scene investigators, identifying, documenting, eventually preserving evidence that will be used in the prosecution of this case. Our DNA experts, the Fort Wayne Laboratory, the Indianapolis Laboratory, for their expertise. The detectives who've taken the torch forward, as Prosecutor Richards said, a couple of 2 or 3 different generations. They worked tirelessly over the years. 10 years ago, I stood before a lot of you on the 20th anniversary of this case. And we asked, in fact, pleaded for the public's help, for their tips. And when those tips came in, representatives from these agencies behind me followed up tirelessly, spending days and weeks away from family. Again, we'd like to thank those that were in on the finality of this case, which culminated in the arrest this past Sunday. Their efforts were phenomenal. So to each of those groups, on behalf of the Indiana State Police, we want to say job well done. Job well done to each and every one of you. Stand tall today, stand proud, just as your community will stand proud with you. Again, we thank the public and the media for their help, for their tips. And from the Indiana State Police, the family of April Tinsley, we hope and we pray that this brings you some measure of closure and some measure of peace that you've been seeking for the last 3 decades. I know somewhere up there's a little girl dancing with her angels. She's celebrating. So when you get on your knees tonight and you talk to her in your dreams and prayers, tell her they did it. They did it. We got it. So I thank you very much for your time this morning. And I'm going to turn this over now to Jim Kazai from the FBI.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jim Kazai. I'm the supervisory special agent for the FBI here in Fort Wayne. First, I'd like to say to April's family that no one ever gave up hope that this day would come, that an arrest would be made in April's senseless death and begin to bring some closure for you. Secondly, I want to congratulate all the law enforcement agencies, Fort Wayne Police Department, the Allen County Police Department, Indiana State Police, the Prosecutor's Office in Allen County, and DeKalb County, for the tremendous amount of great police work that has taken place over the last 3 decades, which led to Sunday's arrest. I would also like to recognize all the other law enforcement agencies that have been involved in this investigation from the beginning in 1988. There are several FBI agents throughout the United States who have had leads assigned to them, and I thank them for all their work. I would also like to mention the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit in Quantico, Virginia, for all the work that they've done during this investigation. There are well-established law enforcement partnerships in Northeast Indiana, and the FBI is proud to be part of all those partnerships with all the agencies represented here today. Today is a big win for law enforcement, and this investigation illustrates the dogged determination of the investigators who never wavered, never gave up, and kept moving forward for the last 30 years. Thank you. Sheriff Gladio from Allen County. Sheriff.
Good morning, Dave Gladio, Sheriff of Allen County. I guess I could just stand up here and say ditto to what just said, but I'm going to touch a little bit on, again, on the collaborative effort that took place in this case throughout 30 years. Whether it be the federal FBI, U.S. Marshals, Indiana State Police, Allen County Sheriff's Department, of course, Fort Wayne Police Department. I touched a little bit on this case back in '04, and I can tell you, you get involved in it. Not one time did I ever see anybody from an agency try to stand up and take credit for doing something more than another agency. And I think it's important that the media understands, and the citizens of at least Allen County in Indiana, we've got a great working crew, and it's a well-oiled machine that works. It took time on this one, but it did work eventually. So, and I'm going to take another shout out to the media. I don't do this very often, but you can congratulate yourselves too, because you played a part. You may not think you did, but you played a huge part, and we appreciate that. And one last thing, we discussed this before we came down here that we weren't going to mention any names, so I won't. But he knows who he is. Detective that started this many years ago. And I just want to take a quick shout out to him. Congratulations to you, sir. And may your sleepless nights out. Anyway, congratulations, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you again for coming this morning. I'm sure you may have some limited questions. Please keep in mind that if you do, there are constraints on what we're able to tell you. If you have questions in the future, all of those should be directed to my attention at the prosecutor's office. Thank you so much.
Okay, can we ask you one question? Have you made a decision on death penalty?
I told you I would discuss the details of the
Well,
case.
I mean, that's a decision.
And that, I think, includes charge decisions.
Ms. Richards, larger issue here, not specific to this case.
Yes, sir.
Do you think that genetic genealogy is a game changer in cold case investigations?
In general, yes, I do.
What would you say to those out there who think they got away with their crimes?
I think this case would help us.
Along those lines, any reason to believe there might be other crimes connected to the individual you arrested?
Again, I won't comment on this case at all.
Any of those tips that came in every time we broadcast this type of story, did any of them ever point to John Miller?
Again, I cannot discuss this case in any detail. I'm sorry.
And how can you ensure that he might get a fair trial here? Because of the pretrial publicity?
That's a trial strategy question that it is inappropriate for me to answer. all of those issues will be fully litigated.
I'm not sure if this is a question for you or law enforcement, but I was wondering if somebody might be able to take us a little bit through the timeline of when Parabon was hired and how that decision was
I
made.
cannot answer any cases specific to this case. Yes, sir.
For you, I'm sure this is an ongoing investigation. Are any accomplices known or being sought after? Anyone who perhaps knew the truth 30, 20, 15 years ago, but did not speak?
The only thing I can answer that every case we have at all points is always an ongoing investigation, and that's really all I can comment. Sir, in the back.
Can you tell us how the family is doing since a suspect has been arrested?
I have met with them. I would not in any way speak for them. I don't think that would be appropriate for me to do that. Yes.
Does the success with the genetic genealogy in this case make you want to, or are you going to use it in other cases, or are you using already?
You know, I think anytime law enforcement investigates a case, they use, as we say, every tool in the toolbox. I think it's become pretty clear in general that DNA in all shapes and forms is a tool in the toolbox.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
For the team of law enforcement people back there, if you wouldn't mind telling us, 30 years on this case, what was the immediate thing, what went through your mind, the immediate emotion you had, the immediate thing you said to yourself when all of a sudden the dots apparently connected and resulted in this arrest?
I can't speak for anybody else. I think I can say that everybody involved had always hoped this day would come. This is not, we've had other older cases where we either had a suspect that we couldn't find, or we needed to find a suspect that had been found or solved in the last 10 or 15 years, and I think we've always pulled out hope that we can solve every case.
At what point was the family notified that either an arrest was coming or an arrest was made?
On Sunday. Yes, sir.
Can you kind of talk about kind of how you guys are feeling knowing that this guy has been in the community on the loose for 30 years and so like let it out of state?
Again, I don't think that giving this particularly germane to the trying of the case, and I think again, that's a case specific.
Mayor Henry, I wonder, could we ask Mayor Henry a question real quick? It's not really investigation related, but being the mayor of the city for such a long time, and put in perspective what it's like to have some resolution possibly in this case, because obviously Fort Wayne, any community is known by some of the things going on in that town, and being able to hopefully clear this up. How does that, how do you view that?
If anything, this, again, lets us all know how hard not only our specific police department works, but the joint effort that takes place on a daily basis between all of the agencies that represent public safety throughout this community and nationally as well. I can't thank all the men and women behind me for the work that they've done. Obviously, this particular situation happened before I was mayor. I was on city council at the time. I remember it well. And it too has haunted this community for over 30 years. And the fact that the men and women in the law enforcement never gave up, as was said several times, it was constantly worked on. And although much of those behind the scenes, it was on the minds of so many who wanted desperately to get this particular crime solved. So again, I can do nothing more at this point than to thank everyone involved. And I certainly appreciate Prosecutor Richards' comments relative to the crime itself and how nothing more can really be said relative to it. But certainly the fact that it presents a situation where true closure can come to this, I think speaks volumes.
All right, folks, I think that concludes our press conference. Thank you again so much.
Oh, you guys, I told the sheriff you were coming, and he said, it's kind of like getting the old band back. I did not tell any stories about you.
Thank God. Should we? No. We could share.
How are you guys? Are you in Fort Wayne? Are you in Florida? You're here? I thought somebody told you.
All right. I go for it. He went to Florida.
All
Where do you go? Watch that guy right there. That's the one I've been telling you about. Oh, excellent. For the last 28 years. Ron, how are you?
Very good. How are you doing today?
Well.
Good.
Good to see you.
Yeah. Keeping everybody in line up here, huh?
That's right.
So that's good. I'm finally glad they got rid of the boogeyman.
Did they?
Well, you know, you know, it was a story that we always grew up with.
Oh, sure.
It's a story we always told our daughters.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's been folklore for 30 years.
Yeah. So I'm glad now we can say he's gone.
Okay.
So
Take care.
we'll see you soon. Real good. How are you doing?
Good.
Thank you, sir. Yep. Going down? All right.
Either the basement or across the street? Across the street. What?
Thank you.